Good morning. Joe, it is my extreme pleasure to meet you today. We are sitting down with Joe Redner and a crew of his making that have been working collectively now for many, many years. Joe, I'm going to let your crew introduce themselves on the record, but good morning to you.
All right, good morning to you.
Good. Go ahead, Adam.
My name's Adam Elin. I've been working with Joe for about 17 years.
My name's Kyle Burns. I've had the distinct pleasure of growing up under the tutelage of Mr. Redner.
That's good stuff.
It's my son.
Yes.
Hello, I'm Jeff Marks. It's a pleasure to be here today. Also been a friend and partner of Joe's for about 17, 18 years now.
You know, Joe, when I reached out to you, I was so excited that you agreed to do the podcast. And so I just started reading because I was trying to find those things about you that perhaps others had not found. And maybe we can explore some of those ideas today. But I guess I want to say this to you. Of all of the things that you've done, the one that is least interesting is the fact you happen to own a strip club. What do you think is the most interesting thing about Joe Redner?
Oh boy, you can't ask me questions. I don't think like that. What's the most interesting thing about me? I have no idea.
Very good. Well, I think it's a talent for you to pick fights with both the state and federal government. And as a fellow libertarian, I thank you for that.
But I kind of feel like they pick the fights with me. You know, when the government does something that there's no justice in, or they hurt people, and I can do something about it, and it's not going to cost me my entire money, everything I have, and maybe even I can make some money off of it while I'm fighting, like at the strip clubs, like the marijuana, that the fight comes to me. I just go ahead and take it.
Well, I know that you have been involved in the protection of our First Amendment rights now, really, as soon as you hit the public airwaves, it was always about protection of First Amendment freedoms.
Well, yeah, that and other some of our other freedoms. Yeah, the First Amendment encompasses a lot that people know. They think it's just religion and speech, but it's not. It's assembly. It's many things that keep us free. One of the things that bothers me is the attack on the press. And that's what despots do. Attack the press, attack the judicial system. I fight the judicial system. I fight the system with the judicial system. But I'm going to tell you something. If Trump destroys our judicial system like he's trying to do, we're done for. We can't allow that to happen.
Do you believe that the attacks that are going on right now, references to the media being enemies of the state, is that a Trump issue, or do you think that's an American problem? Is he alone? Does he have? I hear him say it, but I don't hear a lot of Republicans telling me they don't agree with him.
Is that an American issue?
Meaning that if when Trump goes away, is that problem going to go away, or is it going to linger, in your opinion?
Well, I'm sure he's teaching a few people, and I think if Trump goes away, I think most of it goes away. I think there'll be some hangers-on that try and use it the way he's used it, but I don't think that'll be as successful as he did. I think he tapped into some dissatisfaction in people that were looking for some help, but they got the wrong guy. He's not gonna help them, and they didn't know that, I don't think. But I think they're starting to learn, and we can only hope at the midterms that they take a little power away from Trump in the legislature.
Sure. Well, let's go back and let's not talk about Trump. Let's talk about Joe Redner. When is it that you figured out that you were going to be a soldier in the fight for America's civil liberties?
Well, I went into when I first got into the business, I was working for somebody else.
What business is that?
It was a strip club.
Okay.
Actually, it was a go-go club. They didn't call them strip clubs. They progressed past strip clubs. Now the girls came out in pasties and G-strings, and that's the way they danced. And then when they stopped dancing, they were still wearing the same thing. So they didn't call them strip clubs. I forgot what I was going to say.
You were going to tell us when you got involved in protection of civil liberties.
Yeah, but I had something in my mind.
Okay, that's okay.
And I forgot about it.
Well, so you're in a state that has a Republican governor. You're in a state that has a Republican House and a Republican Senate. We have a Republican Attorney General. Yet you are fighting in arguably one of the most unfriendly environments for your positions. Have you ever thought about just moving to another location, moving to Boulder, Colorado, or moving to Wisconsin and hanging out in Madison? I mean, those are more progressive neighborhoods. What the hell are you doing in such an unprogressive
This
state?
is where my identity is. In Tampa, Florida is my identity. It's where people know me. I'm an introvert. If I go someplace where
You're
I'm
an
not-
introvert?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
If I go someplace where I'm not familiar, I'm done. I have no social skills unless I am an expert in the subject I'm talking about. Otherwise, really, in most things what people talk about, I don't have any interest in it. So,
You're an intelligent man. You're an academic man, but you're not an intellectual.
well, I spent a lot of time in the law library.
Yeah.
I can figure things out, but I don't have a memory like most people do. So I just don't remember things. I've got to install them in my head. It takes me, I remember when I was a child and everybody else would look at a word and they could go on the spelling list, and I had to study that damn list for hours and hours to get it because I couldn't remember it. But I could figure out things that go along with it. We were talking about the First Amendment.
Yes, how you have been the First Amendment entered your life as the owner of a strip club, and it appears to have stayed there because we'll talk in a minute about some of the other things that you have done that I think a lot of people are not aware of. The things you've done to protect freedom of assembly, to freedom of speech, and generally keeping the government off of our backs. That's your fight.
Yeah, but my original fight, I learned some things. See, you learn about due process. You have the First Amendment, that's speech, but you also have due process, which means that, and due process applies to different subjects differently. If it's a fundamental right, the government has a really high bar to go ahead and interfere with that. And you learn about the process, you learn about all that. You can't just learn about the First Amendment. You need it all. It's the entourage, like marijuana, the entourage effect.
The entourage effect, yes, I know what the entourage effect is. Sure. Have you spent as many hours reading about marijuana as you have about the First Amendment?
So I went to the law library because I didn't trust my lawyers.
Right.
That's
smart.
Well, it's just that they have 18, 20, 30, 40, 50 clients. And I know my cases is going to take dedication, real dedication. So I went in and I learned it myself.
All right, so you're, just for context of the recording, you're 77 years old.
78.
78. Happy birthday. I must have been recently. Was it a recent birthday?
July.
Okay. You're 78 years old. You have stage 4 lung cancer.
Well, I had stage 4 lung cancer.
Stage 4 lung cancer doesn't really go away, though, does it?
That's what they say.
They
That's
say it
not
has
what I
gone
know.
away? Oh, you think it does or doesn't go away?
Yeah, I think it went away.
And you associate that with the fact that you had been juicing cannabis plants.
No, I haven't never used cannabis.
You've never done it.
No,
Okay.
but I did cannabis oil.
Okay.
I cooked my own. I got my stuff from I had friends in Colorado, and I'd never let a bad law run my life. You know, I'm not gonna let. I'll follow all your good laws that protect people and do good for people. But when you put up a law that interferes with my rights, I'm not gonna go by it, and I'm gonna fight you, and then I'm gonna defend myself in court. I wanted to do this with the marijuana, but I can't. I was just going to grow and juice
Right.
and let them come arrest me. If they think that they can get a conviction in this state for a medical marijuana patient growing his own to drink it, let them have at it, because it ain't going to happen.
And let it be Joe Redner.
Yeah, please let it be me, but I can't because we're going for a license. And while the litigation was going on, it would disqualify me from holding a license.
I understand.
So I can't do that.
So you had a better chance gaining access to marijuana before you got involved in the marijuana fight.
Yeah, I was getting marijuana from Colorado, maybe California, shipped in, and
We won't say too much more about how you get your
well,
marijuana.
it doesn't.
in the
It's
state.
really
Yeah,
not. The Postal Service is the biggest
Drug
shipper of
dealer.
marijuana
FedEx is
drug
the
dealer.
biggest
Yeah,
drug
it's,
dealer in America. Yeah,
it's
oh,
just
I
on FedEx, Brad, all of them. They just ship them. Everybody ships it. They know how to package it. It doesn't smell. They shipped it here to me. I cooked it up and I took it. I cooked the oil in the butter on my stove, and I took it. And I think that helped me. I don't know. We're starting to find out that actually it helps the cancer. I thought it just helped me with how I felt during the chemo and the radiation. Chemo is make you wish you were dead. Okay?
Right.
It makes you wish you were dead
I tell people that
for a while, but you know, in a week or something, that you're gonna start getting over it. The ones I was taking, you're gonna feel better. So that's something to look forward to.
an oncologist told me that chemotherapy is like blowing up an airplane, except you want to kill everyone except the guy in 7B. It's difficult.
It's a blunt instrument.
It's a very blunt instrument. Yes.
When you're doing that juice, that the THC infused oil, it relaxes you. It takes all the needles away from your body that's going in there, and you can tolerate it. I went and exercised. I got on a Stairmaster every single day. I had
With
stage
lung
4
cancer.
lung cancer,
Got
getting
it.
chemo and radiation. I was getting on a Stairmaster every day to fill my lungs. I had stage 4 lung cancer. To fill my lungs with air. I fought it like I fought the law. I fought it just like that. I just went at it as full as I could, and I ate. I'm a good eater, but I narrowed it down. Started eating even better than I was. I'm a raw vegan, and I fought it and I won. And I'm not regressing. People regress. Here I won. I'm better. Let me go back to what I was doing before. I don't do that.
I mean, my impression too is that you've not only been fighting for your own individual rights and freedoms, but you've also been giving other people opportunities to express their own beliefs and own views. With your Voice of Freedom, for example, giving people an opportunity to give their opinions, even if they don't necessarily agree with you.
I like other people's opinion. I don't usually have an original opinion in my mind. I'm telling you, I feed off other people. But I have a capability of taking this and reading it and knowing which one is good and which one's bad.
You have when's the first time you ran for any elected office?
Oh, I don't remember.
A long time.
86, somewhere, if it was election year.
Right.
Yeah, I was high on cocaine the whole damn time.
When you were running or just on the
First
election
time
day?
I ran, no,
Okay.
no. Marijuana and cocaine.
I guess with cocaine, you could probably shake a few more hands. You'd be moving faster.
Actually, I was addicted, so it wasn't for purpose. I was addicted to it.
Okay. And when
I
did
actually got put in jail for it.
for being addicted, or just having a
for
possession?
having possession of under a gram of cocaine. I was at the stadium and I thought I was invisible and I snorted. It was 83 or 84, I think, and I haven't touched any kind of drug except marijuana since then. It's been 30 years since I've had any kind of drug. I don't drink. I don't do any of that stuff.
When looking at the campaigns that you've waged politically over the last 20 years, I found a lot of the positions that you had offered back in the 80s. And frankly, it looks like I'm reading a website from 2018. The progressive ideas, just to mention a few of these, back in the 80s, you were talking about making affordable housing a reality. You were talking about mass transportation, and you were talking about environmental protections on the local level, which is unheard of. I was mentioning to your crew before you got here that it seems to me that if anybody ever wanted to conduct fracking in Hillsborough County, Joe Redner would be out there fighting them for it. Is that a fair
Yeah,
statement?
I'd be helping the people that are fighting it. Yes,
That's what I mean.
Absolutely, it's dangerous, and it's dangerous to the environment, and it's dangerous to our children. It's dangerous to your grandchildren, and they're taking their lives away from them. They're so worried about their children. Why aren't they worried about their lives in the future? All they care about is putting $1 in their pocket today. And then they give lip service to caring about their children, but they don't. They don't. Look what they're doing to Lake Okeechobee. What you're talking about there was the Green Swamp. Was it what county is it? Pasco County, with the Green Swamp, where they started filling it in and building big shopping centers up there, and that's where we get our water from. That feeds the Hillsborough River, and they were starting to destroy that. Yeah, I had a big problem with that. I have a big problem with Lake Okeechobee, what they're doing down there. And now they're going to take the dirty water and they're going to spread it out in the friggin' Everglades. That's crazy. You can't put those nutrients in that lake and keep doing it. You can't do it. It's going to keep happening. And now they want to build the berms up and put the dikes, more dikes around it. So now all you got is a deeper toilet, a deeper cesspool. You can't do those things. You're destroying our future, your children's future. And I don't understand it. It's greed and it's arrogance. It's everything that's wrong with man that's doing these things.
I think that where you find yourself is, we hope that if we live in a community like Tampa, that there's a Joe Redner out there fighting for these particular issues. And are you comfortable taking the heat as opposed to a more traditional politician?
I take it. I love
Conflict.
the confrontation. On this, I don't like confrontation. I don't like silly arguments or anything like that. I just won't do that. But when it comes to existence and things that are going to have an effect on people's lives, yeah, I'm gonna take a position and I'm gonna defend my position. And I won't take a position that I cannot defend, so I don't have to worry about it.
Do you think marijuana will ever be legal in the United States?
Well, I don't think I think it will be impossible to keep it from being legal. I mean, it's just such a miracle plant, not just a drug, it's a miracle plant. It solves probably 100 problems we have on this planet. Solves them. The plastic problem, a whole bunch of problems we have. Our oceans filling up with plastic. They won't degrade. Hemp does that. It degrades. And it will serve its function in the meantime before it degrades. So you don't have to worry about it. And I don't understand why they won't do it. Not only what they won't do it, it's illegal. Hemp is illegal in a lot of places. They're just starting now to make it legal. These people are dinosaurs. They're back in the dark ages somewhere. You have receptors in your body. Go look and Google it. You have cannabinoid receptors in your body. If you don't do marijuana, you're cannabinoid deficient. To function at the highest level, your body needs cannabinoids.
But don't you think the problem is that the model that we're all following is not the idea that we're going to examine the efficacy of cannabis or the potential uses of it? Instead, what we have is a lot of moneyed interests. If you look at a lot of the representatives in the state of Florida who have fought against medical marijuana, they're being supported by beer distributors that are paying them large sums of money to squelch.
It's been going on my entire life, where people give big money to politicians to get their way. That's not in the interest of the people of this country.
But it's never been this bad.
I know.
It's the worst it's ever been.
And I don't understand it. I don't understand why people. You can just look at where the money is. You can look at the special interests. You can look up in Tallahassee. You can see the energy company and who they're giving the money to and who's writing the legislation for and who's letting the energy company write the legislation that's not in the interest of the people of Florida. Who's doing all that? Just look at where the money goes from the energy company. It goes to the Republicans. They're the ones that are doing it. They're all fat cats sitting up there with all this big money, with their suits on and their ties, walking around, destroying our state, keeping people from getting their medicine, and they're walking around just smiling at each other, laughing. Just pisses me off so bad I can't stand it.
Amendment 2 passes by almost 72% in the state of Florida, but there doesn't appear to be any response in the legislature to the strength of that. I mean, what the hell else?
Not where they get their money.
So how do we change that?
They get their money from the pharmaceutical companies. They get their money from all those people. That's who supports it. That's how they get elected. They're not going to change. They have no morals. They have no ethics. They're in the pocket. I don't know how to say that enough to people. Don't
You're
vote
preaching
for
to the choir here today,
who's
of course.
getting the money. Vote
Right.
for the people that aren't getting the money. You're going to get a fair you may not. You're probably going to get a fair shake out of them if they have any kind of intelligence with it. I'm not telling people to vote for people that aren't qualified, but look at them and see where they're getting the money. And you can't go by the R and you can't go by the D.
They're really, it's very difficult. Although that argument has been used by a lot of Republicans to suppress voting response on the left by telling people on the left that there isn't a difference. The truth is there is a difference between Sean Shaw running for Attorney General and Ashley Moody. Ashley Moody will be general counsel to the Republican Party. Sean Shaw will give the independents. That's where we have to start drawing distinctions, and that is we have to build independence from the party machine that is squeezing and choking our political system in the state of Florida.
Yeah, Sean Shaw and Gillen are where I'm putting my energy and where I'm putting my money. So I think that they're the best for the state of Florida. I like Sean Shaw. His father was the first black Supreme Court, head of the Supreme Court of Florida. He was a justice. He's a fighter, a real fighter. And he says it like it is. He doesn't mince his words. He tells you what he's going to do, and if you don't like it, don't vote for him. He's coming in and he's going to clean some house. He's going to sue some people. Like Okeechobee is, it's there for the court system to go ahead and to do something about it.
That's a good transition to jumping over now to actually talking about the specific lawsuits, and I want to bring some of your crew in. One of the things I really enjoyed reading is that, and speaking with your folks, is that this is very much a team effort to resolve many of the battles that you've had in the last past. Isn't that true? You rely upon your family a lot. You're a family guy.
Well, my family is people that I have around me. It's not necessarily my blood.
Agreed. You're right. I misspoke. But it's the idea that you have these relationships with individuals that you've had over time, a lot of mutual respect. You love them. They are your family, of
And
course.
I love them because they're good people, and there is mutual respect. I know what they're going to do. I know they're not going to hurt anybody. I know what their interest is going to be to help people, and to right the wrongs that are being done. That's what they want to do. But also they do their job. I don't want to say jobs. They take care of their business while they're doing it. So, yeah, those are the people I like to be around.
So, Adam, you've been in jail a few times.
I've been in jail once with Joe. Joe has been in jail 157, 158 times, so I don't feel like it's even a good transition to say.
Okay.
But with Joe once, I've been in jail, and Jeff, I think, twice. So, but the experience, when Jeff and I were documentary filmmakers when we first met Joe, we came down to Tampa. We thought it would be really fun during the 6-foot ordinance craziness, which was probably his last battle with the city.
Documented all that.
Okay. And for those who've been under a rock for the last 20 years, what was happening is that they had passed, was it a city ordinance?
City ordinance.
City ordinance that the dancers could not get within 6 feet
While they were nude. A customer.
Right. So we came here to show this battle between the strip club king and the city, both with interests. One had the First Amendment, the other had the interests of the community at heart. We thought it would be really interesting. And then we got here and we met Joe, and we met the person on the other end of that, who's the current mayor of Tampa, Bob Buckhorn, who's ordinance it was, who wrote the ordinance, and we realized that it was political. It was all about development. And this guy was sitting here talking not just about Larry Flint stuff, about the First Amendment and things like that, which are critically important, but beyond that, about the things you were talking about the environment, about social justice, about the death penalty, about the law being his safety net, his rope that he could hold on to no matter what else is happening, because the rule of law is what separates us from other places. So, and when we saw that 6-foot fight, we also saw how Joe was fighting it, and the way he was fighting it was he was defying the ordinance. He put on his sign, "Greco, you coward, enforce your ordinance," and he was on news saying, "We are violating the ordinance now. We will continue to violate the ordinance." And what they did was they said, "Come arrest the dancers," and obviously paid for the legal fees. But let's try these cases. No speedy trial. Let's try these cases. Let's do it. And yes, speedy trial. Let's do it right away. Go ahead. You can take it from there.
I got him. I provoked him. I knew we'd already been through rulings, and they ruled against us on the constitutional issues, which was wrong. It was all political. So they were. I let the cases accumulate, and it got up to over 100 cases. So now they all got into a bunch and I didn't waive speedy trial on any of them. They kind of all got into a bunch, and the prosecutor came up to me and he said, "Here's the deal we're going to make you." And he gave me a deal that just, was just crazy.
Was silly, right?
Yeah. So I told him, I said, nah, we're going to try every goddamn one of these. Every one. They can't get a jury trial, but I can take up a half a day to a day on every one of those trials. There's 100 of them. How in the hell is the court system going to do that? It can't. It's my plan. This is my.
It's the only way, because otherwise the state has infinite resources.
So the judge looked at the prosecutor and he says, "Make these go away. I got important cases I have to take care of. I got people out there driving on the street, killing people drunk. So I need to take care of those cases, and you're not going to tie my courtroom up on these cases for a year, because that's what would happen."
Right.
And would have took one court system out of service for a year just trying these cases to get a speedy trial, because if you don't do it within 90 days, the case goes away.
Hello, it's Ted Corless with News Munchies. Follow us on our website at www.newsmunchies.com. Also look for us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. News Munchies, dedicated to the legalization, medicalization, and reformation of America's marijuana laws.
But so to jump back into it, so from the very beginning, Joe was like this. He's like, I don't think this is going to be part of any kind of implementing bill. No one's talking about it, but it's clearly laid out here. And as a qualified patient, Joe became a patient right away after the amendment passed. He was clearly qualified under the definition in the amendment. And basically, all of us had been kind of on the same course with Joe, reading the amendment, kind of discussing how you could challenge this. And it became apparent that it wasn't going to be part of any implementing legislation. It was very clear from the moment the amendment passed that the Department of Health was like, home grow is not allowed.
Well, most of the other, and just for context too, having read every one of the other states' laws associated with medical marijuana, majority of those bills include the right to personal possession, personal growing, at least to a limited, maybe it limits you to 6 plants.
I think in most of the states, when an amendment passes or a referendum passes that says patients can have medical marijuana, the states accept the fact that we've turned a corner and we're going to let people have marijuana. Like, it's not.
Well, the lights have come up.
We're going to try and do two things at once. We're going to try and allow it for medical patients, and in Florida, we're going to try and keep it as criminalized as we can. It's a ridiculous paradigm they're trying to keep going. But so started to break down the amendment, started to break down the case law, and it was very clear that Joe was going to sue for his rights as a patient to possess a plant, growing or not. So Joe first filed suit in Hillsborough County and tried to keep the case in Hillsborough County, the logic being And this is a little bit of minutia that if he was going to get arrested for it, he'd be arrested in Hillsborough County. So
That's
I
the
think
rule.
case,
Of course, we got, what's her name, Elizabeth Rice?
Judge Rice.
Judge Rice, she had no
Appointed
idea.
by our opponent.
Yeah.
Because that, what do they call that, some exception?
Sword wielder's
Sword
exception.
wielder's exception. If where you have to challenge a law where the agency's main office is, except if where you would be arrested for violating that law is in your county, that's where you can challenge it, because that's where you would be defending yourself. She didn't want that case. I'm kind of glad, because we'd have lost anyway with her. She's just out there.
Well, I think the first thing is
So
Joe sued. Joe
So we
filed
went
this
to
lawsuit,
Tallahassee and we got a good
and
judge.
it just sat in her court. I mean,
Yeah.
all of a sudden the computers in the courthouse didn't work. Like there was all kinds of delays. Finally, we got a hearing in her court, which was really just about the change of venue motion that came from the state. She kicked it to Tallahassee. At that point, it had dragged on so long. Joe had filed for a temporary injunction, I believe, and the judge who got the case in Tallahassee, Judge Karen Gievers, it was immediately apparent to her that this thing has been kicked around for months. We're going to have a hearing on this motion for temporary injunction. Joe presented his, he brought in some experts to talk about the medical efficacy of home grow patients and juicing medical cannabis. Joe did a lot of research on kind of the best preparation for him for what he wanted to do. And the raw acidic THCA compound, the non-psychoactive compound you can get through juicing it, is the way Joe wanted to administer it.
I guess that would be true because you're not heating it up.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're not carbon. What is it? Decarb.
Yeah.
or what is it?
Boxylated,
Decarboxylated.
Carb. Yeah, there you go. And so if you're never doing that, THCA never becomes THC, so you don't get.
Which
any
is the
full-
dose limit. It is a limiting factor, so you can only absorb so much while being comfortable. Well, that keeps the overall efficacy of the medicine down because you can only consume so much, right? The idea that you can consume a non-psychoactive version, you actually can absorb quite a bit more than what you would be dose limited by the effect of the THC. So you can then consume far more cannabinoids without being uncomfortable, and you can get far more efficacy out of the medicine.
So Joe
And the
had,
effect it would have on you in that form and shape is the same that a carrot would have an effect on you. It has no effect on you whatsoever. Broccoli, carrot, it's a vegetable, and that's the way it is when it's not decarboxylated.
Okay.
Joe's doctor.
Love the carrot. Love
here
the
in
carrot.
Florida is recommending Dr.
I like carrots.
Dr. Barry Gordon, who's one of the leading doctors in the state for working with medical cannabis patients. He had no mechanism to write Joe a recommendation to grow his own and juice cannabis because it didn't exist in the state parameter, but he provided an affidavit for Joe's case. He came and testified. And I think some of the reason for that was to give the court some background. Like, it was unclear how much the court knew about any of this, but really the argument rested in the plain language of the amendment. There is nothing in any, court of law where the plain language of a constitutional amendment is trumped by anything else. So certainly we presented that to the court. The judge the judge ruled a few weeks later after that hearing. She did not give Joe his temporary injunction, but she, in one paragraph of her ruling, said it is clear that Mr. Redner has a constitutional right to possess a growing plant. And from then, the writing was on the wall, and basically she let's go to trial and move forward. We had a short trial in her court. The state, that's when Kyle was talking before about where the
Didn't show up really.
Really, they said let's just give. They were happy if they
even
take
wanted
summary
it in her
judgment,
court.
yeah.
They said that they were telling us, we'll just get on to the first
They were
piece
telling
of
her.
Yeah.
They stood in her courtroom and told her that. They
were
didn't just
really-
tell us
They're
that.
like, why do we need to have a trial?
It's kinda
Your
spooky,
opinion
yeah.
doesn't matter, Judge.
Why do we need to have a trial? Summary judgment would work just fine, but Joe had his trial. The judge ruled in his behalf. In those kind of cases, the state is entitled to an automatic stay.
Right.
So I had
If
to
they
go
appeal,
back to her.
Which,
and
by
ask
the way,
her-
I recently had this happen when we had a battle with Citizens Property Insurance. So if you ordinarily, if you win a trial, even the filing of the appeal doesn't affect it automatically. You're the winner. You prevailed. The other side has to go ask for the stay, unless you're a government entity.
Yes.
And because you're a government entity, you get the automatic stay, and you have to go seek relief under the automatic
and
stay.
it's rare when the trial judge, overturns the automatic stay, from my understanding. In this case, she overturned the automatic stay with some more harsh language for the state, but the First District Court of Appeals reinstated the stay. So right now, Joe's case is in the appeals court. They got just about every delay conceivable before they actually filed their appeal. They just filed it last week.
The notice, just
Their
the
brief.
notice.
Filed
They
their
filed the
brief.
brief. Okay.
The notice was right away, and then
Yeah.
it's been over 6 months. So they normally get 90, or they normally get 60 days. They got another 60 days. They got another 30 days. That's just the way they
There
do.
is no new argument in their brief. It is the same. The Constitution says what we say it is. It is the same. There's a statute out there that clearly says that home grow is not, is against the law. Never mind what the Constitution says. It's the same smoke and mirrors argument that they had before. So that is the kind of long-winded version of
Say how important this is, because there are people out there suffering that can't get their medicine. They can't afford it. It's right now a rich man's drug.
Well, I
If
can-
you can
right,
grow your
right.
yeah. It costs
Because I can fly in air. I can go to Boulder. I'm going to Boulder tomorrow, and I get all the marijuana I want if I want to bring it home somehow.
Yeah, and it's going to cost you if you start from the beginning. You go to the doctor. You do go through all the hoops, bells and whistles that the state makes you go through to get your card. It's going to cost you $500.
Right.
Who can afford that?
Right.
People that are sick and need it can't afford it. So if they can grow their own, they stick a couple of seeds in the ground, or they go to the dispensary and they get a couple of clones, and they come home and they put it in the ground. They got their medicine. What is it called? It's going to cost them pennies. Why don't they want people to have their medicine? I don't understand it.
Well, that's a rhetorical question. You know the answer to, which is they want you to use their drugs. They don't want you using your drugs.
Well, so when we were first looking at that time that we were looking at the amendment that Jeff was talking about, we intended to participate in this market in Florida, and we looked at what was there, and we said, what is the best way for us to succeed in Florida to succeed here? And we felt like there were two things that had to happen. One is the patients had to be protected and stood up for. That was the purpose of the amendment. And secondly, that the access to the market had to be fair. Because when you talk about people who don't have enough money, what affects them the most? One, they can't grow it themselves. But two, when the prices are high, when the availability is low, and when entry into the market has such a high bar for no reason whatsoever, no one's going to get a chance to participate. And all the wrongs that have been created by the drug war over 30, 40, 50 years can't be corrected. When you have 5 entries as their original licenses, 5 licenses, how many of those you think are going to go to the people who have been most impacted, people of color and poor people, by the drug war? None. And then when they even carve out an exception for 1 out of 14, that's not real. But when anybody who lives in the community can get a small license to do what they want to do to operate, there's going to be 100. If recreational marijuana was federally legal tomorrow, there would be 1 million new jobs in America. That means just percentage of population, 100,000 new Florida jobs.
No, I agree.
That's
you
just
can
by percentage of population. Sure. So it's critical that you have a program that supports the people who've been hurt and the people who can't afford it. That's what a program is for. So the 2 lawsuits that we've filed, Joe's lawsuit for home grow and our lawsuit trying to destroy the siloed licensing program they have right now and do, again, directly what the amendment said, that was the purpose behind both of them.
And the lawsuit associated with Flora Grown,
Yes.
What is the status of that lawsuit?
So,
Because and again, for context, you submitted an application, Joe. You met all of the paper requirements, but they denied your application. What was the reason why?
Because they're not accepting. They're not accepting applications.
My understanding is they won't grow the number of application, or they won't accept the pending applications because they're purportedly claiming they're waiting for the number of medical marijuana card holders to get to a certain threshold, which is a huge misnomer too, because of the fact they've put such crazy restrictions on who
I
can
can
get a
open
card.
100 breweries in Hillsborough County. All I have to do is find the locations, the zoning, and there are plenty out there. There's no caps. Anybody that can meet the requirements, which it should be, can open a brewery. Anybody. Why is these marijuana any different? I'll tell you why. It's a fledgling industry. It's just coming out. It's big, big money, and they're giving it to their buddies.
Well, part of the problem that I believe you raised in your brief was that they are actually promoting the way that they have created the licensing. They're promoting the idea of like arbitrage on the licenses, meaning that I go through the exercise of getting the license, not because I'm going to provide safe medicine to Floridians. I'm doing that because I'm going to flip the license and sell it to somebody else for some ridiculous. Tell me, how much are these licenses going for?
50?
$100 million?
The first license was flipped and sold for $53 million.
Right.
There's been 4 sales so far, and the newest one is an undisclosed amount. Some of that has to do with stock and value in a different company.
And these are licenses that are
Well, we're talking about $100 million.
right. And these are the medical licenses, the rec licenses.
Well, see, you go to Colorado, where you're going to go tomorrow and try to pay $53 million for a license. They're going to laugh at you. They're not worth that much because our legislature created that $53 million from nothing. It doesn't exist in a healthy market because it's a function of the limit.
Market.
Yeah, it's a function of the limit. But I think something that's very important, what you were saying is not exactly accurate about where the posture of the licensing is from the state.
Correct.
Essentially what they did, there's a couple things. One is they passed a law that severely limited the number of licenses. It limited it to 10 and then another 4 for every 100,000 patients, which is what you were talking about. But it's gone worse than that. We're way over 100,000 patients, and another 4 licenses have been authorized by the law. That law is unconstitutional, but beyond it, the department
been found to be unconstitutional.
But the department has not even given out those licenses. In fact, in practice, in what this state did is go back to 2014. No one who did not apply in 2014 for the limited low THC program here, where you had to be a 30-year nursery. Consecutive
Which was
nursery,
designed to favor
which
people
was
who are in the
designed
citrus industry.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Big Republican donors.
big donors. They're all So nobody who did not meet that requirement has gotten a license. So they passed a law that said, yeah, we'll give a few to people outside this group, and then in practice, 14, not a single one outside that group. So we challenged that too. But then, but the fundamental problem is the boat just doesn't float. The process that they put in place goes against 80 years of administrative law. It just doesn't make any sense. You can't use a process like they want to use to pick these very limited licenses because it doesn't work. But beyond that, there's no reason for it at all. The only purpose for these caps is to put it in a few individual hands. Those people can grow as much as they want. There's no limit on their processing. They have a huge number of dispensaries they can each have, and that limit sunsets in 2020. So it's truly an unlimited license in very few hands.
And then you have, I recall when Senator Latvala spoke at an event, and he was complaining that one of the problems with the licenses is the sheer number of locations that they could open up.
Pot shop on every corner.
Pot shop on every corner, which
we
was
have it. Yeah,
right.
It's in our law. It's just in the hands of 5 to 10 people. They, that new law.
They've taken it out of the hands of the local authorities.
Yeah.
If you did the math,
because they want to control everything.
No zoning. You can't even zone it.
And this is the Republican Party of limited government. Is that what this is?
If you did the math, the requirements to satisfy the need of the state, by conservative estimates, by their estimates, was about 1,700 dispensaries. If you look at that, they said they didn't want a pot shop on every corner. They gave a pot shop on every corner just to a select few number of licenses. And these people that applied in 2014 under this low THC Charlotte's Web created system, that's great. We needed that foot in the door for medical cannabis to then get the ball rolling in the state of Florida. However, these licenses were for a total of 2,000 potential patients the way they set this up. 2,000 in the entire state, right? And then these 5 licenses suddenly get grandfathered into a system that is millions of people large. This company was set up to be the Walmart of weed from the get-go, except you're not one of the Waltons.
Well,
Right, right.
and
And the money invested in these particular enterprises may not even be Florida money. It could be elsewhere.
is not. There's
Oh,
maybe
it's
two.
not.
There are
Right.
2 that are
Well,
Florida
yeah,
money.
I mean, maybe half.
Yeah, but I mean,
are owned by
more importantly, so they had those 5 that had licenses before, but they also gave away, at this point through litigation and through just giving them to them, the rest of the 9 to people who lost in that program, and we call them the litigants and losers. They just handed licenses to anyone who was within 1 point of winning in that first competition in 2014. After the scoring system had been ruled totally unconstitutional, or had been in litigation with the department on January 1st, 2017. If they were in litigation with the department, they automatically got a license. And all of those litigation licenses have been flipped, every single one. So hand me a license for suing, and then just let me flip it for $53 million.
Whether they were qualified or not, because you could have been unqualified and sued and said, give me my license, and they gave you a license.
So, yeah, some are unqualified.
I guess where I'm kind of digesting that is there's the impression that these are the details that they're following that are designed to protect the people and the law, but the truth is they're baking in things in the law that are actually going to be problems in the immediate future as well as in the long-term future of the marketplace.
Basically no accountability no oversight from the legislature over the people that they've entrusted to or empowered to implement their statute, for one. So if their idea was this is going to be very limited and small, that would violate the Constitution, but at least it might be a consistent position. Instead, the people that bungled the first application process that allowed basically 5 licenses to turn into now 14 through litigation, with 8 or 9 more suing now from this original first pool of people from 2014 and 2015, dealing with all that litigation, they haven't even gotten to this next level of registering MMTCs per the amendment that's now part of the Constitution of Florida.
MMTC is Medical Marijuana Treatment Center,
Yes,
right?
that is the name the amendment creates for any business involved in any part of the supply chain. The amendment is very clear that there can be a tiered system where you can do one or many things. The legislature in their implementing statute changed the language of the amendment to say that you had to do all of these things and could not outsource or have any kind of subcontracting relationship with another part of the supply chain.
The result of the result is exactly what you said. We have the most dangerous marijuana system in the country because we have these huge companies, but we have 3 things: no waste regulations, we have no seed to sale tracking in the state, and we have no limit on supply. So, no, I'm sorry, no way to control supply. So, Colorado.
And those are the things that the amendment gives the state the right to regulate. They're regulating everything else except the safety of the plant.
They still have no testing requirements.
And in Florida, marijuana doesn't grow so well without.
It's a mess. I mean,
infected
right.
somehow.
Well, between the mold, between
Yeah.
the biologicals on cannabis,
The pest pressure
it's
in
crazy.
Florida is particularly bad,
So-
and they're all doing. Most of them are doing greenhouse grows, and we've seen evidence of very poor quality of marijuana.
Well,
Yeah. It's like trying to
Tell you
grow
what,
Bordeaux
let me
grapes
predict
in
something.
Bradenton.
Let me predict something for you. They have a system. They're going to give out. They're going to put out like 4 or 5 licenses. I don't know how many. Doesn't matter. There's going to be 300 applicants for the licenses. That's what they predict. I think there's going to be 100, but because it's so expensive. But there's going to be 300 applicants. in Florida administrative law, everybody that applied and doesn't get a license has a right to a comparative review with the person that did, to see in an administrative law court to see who really should get the license. So this one person gets a license. Every one of those people have a right to challenge that person getting the license in a separate hearing. You got 300 hearings for one friggin' license. It's impossible.
What are we going to
They
do?
can't do that.
We would have to create a special administrative law judge whose sole purpose would be to conduct this public review, I guess.
And it has to be in separate hearings.
And we're talking about the license expense, isn't it $15,000? 60 now.
Well,
Non-refundable.
that's
What's
the application.
That's what I'm saying. So you have to have.
Non-refundable application.
Okay, so it's 60. I've got that wrong.
And then it's 200.
So you have to
or
have the
more.
resources to go through that. And I get, as a lawyer, I get phone calls all the time from people who want to go through that exercise. And I'm not working on those kinds of projects because it's something you would have to be completely dedicated to as a lawyer.
Yeah, and I would say this is what they did. What they did with marijuana is not uncommon for this legislature. That's the challenge. This is what they do to amendments. This is what they did to the solar amendment we passed at the same time we passed it in 2016.
Or high-speed rail, same thing.
Or
they dipped with
class
that.
size amendment. Every single time they put an implementing bill in that contravenes the plain language of the amendment. I know that because we have a case from 2007 where they did the exact same thing that they did with this amendment, where they changed a definition that was in the amendment that referred to a statute, which is what they did with the definition of marijuana. And the Supreme Court said you can't change the definition of the amendment. We're breaking new ground because this is marijuana, but the legal concepts are so basic. You have to follow the plain text of the amendment. That's the principal argument in both our cases.
Well, Scalia would say that would make you an originalist.
Exactly.
And so let's follow what he
We
has to
had
say.
our Federalist Society lawyer arguing that the Constitution is a living document.
Wow.
The opposite in the court trying to get out of this pickle they put themselves in.
So when I'm sitting in a space and things up seems down, left seems right, I'm probably having a conversation with Joe Redner. Joe, how much of this is you? I mean, you have found a place to fight, and I appreciate you doing that. I'm glad that you're doing that. I know that you have other things you probably rather be doing at 78 years old. Really? This is where you want to be?
Yeah, absolutely. I do what I want to do every single day. And this is what I want to do. I want to fight the people that need fighting.
As we start to wrap up here, I want to thank you again for coming in, and I want to take the opportunity to anyone who's listening to this to get online, find out what Joe's doing, follow us on News Munchies. So we're going to be writing more about the specifics. And the other thing I want to encourage everyone to do is to vote. We need people to vote, if never more than now. I can't even imagine how we can change things. If you look at states like Alabama, Roy Moore trying to become the senator from the state of Alabama, and it was people of color, specifically women of color, who came out to vote that really made the difference. And we hope that we see that kind of opportunity here in the state of Florida. Joe, we're going to stay on top of your success. And as these things go forward, we'd love to have you come back and you can tell us everything.
And I'll just say, Joe is a regular assassin for justice on Facebook. So connect with Joe on Facebook, and that's a great way to get connected to all of us. You can find him very easily. He's got a fan page and a personal, but he's right there fighting the fight there too. So
good. And gentlemen, I appreciate everybody coming in today to talk. Super.
Thanks for having me.
Thank Joe. My pleasure.